Blood and cheese will be underwhelming, and here's why. There's speculation within the fandom that Blood and Cheese will be House of the Dragon Season 2's version of the Red Wedding, forcing a mother to watch as one of her beloved sons is slaughtered right before her eyes.
Send their regards.
I can definitely see how fans can easily come to this conclusion. However, between the lack thereof of relationship and audience building between Helena, Jaehaerys, and Maelor, and even the King Aegon II himself, that impact of the Red Wedding is almost undoubtedly unlikely to happen. As of this coming March, we'll be hitting 11 years since Season 3 of Game of Thrones. Let's never forget the initial reaction that fans had to the Red Wedding scene.
You know what? That's why this is the best show of all time.
Yeah, it was pretty freaking intense. And this reaction seemed to be mutually shared amongst book readers and show watchers alike. It was simply phenomenal. It definitely was the era of when Dan and Dave got it right. But the ingredients that made this scene so spectacular are rather nuanced. However, quite simple. Aegon II is not Ned Stark, Helena is not Catelyn Stark, and the Prince Jaehaerys Targaryen is not Robb Stark, nor were they giving the psychological, protagonistic opportunity or screen time to be loved as such. George R. R. Martin and Game of Thrones broke many unprecedented barriers when they decided our main protagonist, Ned Stark, the epitome of Northern honor and loyalty's tragic end will come as early as episode 9 during season 1. This sent shockwaves through not only Hollywood, but media television, because it was simply rare on top of being beautifully executed on screen. This without a doubt was the turning point when everyone, but especially non-book readers, knew no one was safe in this Game of Thrones. But more importantly, almost always the protagonist is designed to be the person we most sympathize with. As the main character, they're the person we get to know the best. We spend the most time with them, we get into their heads, and for other characters such as Helena, we generally do not. We learn more of their backstory and motivations. All this extra knowledge and shared experience helps us to identify more with them, vicariously placing ourselves and our own experience into their context. The key factor here is empathy. The more time we spend with people and the more we understand why they do what they do, the more we understand their motivations, their struggles, and their dreams, the more likely we are to root for them. Have you ever wondered why we support our friends no matter what? In contrast, Helena being a secondary character, as well as her close association with our primary antagonist side, doesn't allow her the same grace. Now firstly, nowhere am I saying that Helena is some sort of Tywin or Roose Bolton figure. However, she is the wife to our main antagonist, Aegon II Targaryen, who, mind you, the show so gladly portrays as the hard R word that rhymes with capist. From rumors told by Mushroom, who happens to not even be in the show, but nonetheless makes Helena a target for unprovoked scrutiny and justifications of wrongdoings that will and may happen to her family in the future. It's no secret that majority of book readers and show watchers alike tend to advocate and lean towards characters who are written in a more positive light, because they tend to represent ideals and traits that we desire and hope for within ourselves. Honorable and just as a Stark over arrogant and proud like a Lannister, right? These character qualities have unique consequences in sight of audience acceptance and impact, no more so than times of tragedy and loss. This is why fans cheered, rejoiced, and celebrated even the death of Joffrey I Baratheon at the Purple Wedding. He was an unredeemable antagonist who should have seen it coming, who deserved it even. Fans would and did find a way to justify his murder, and rightfully so in many cases. However, it's undoubtedly notable that only 3 episodes earlier, those same fans were distraught, hurt, and broken even at the unexpected murder and betrayal of Robb and Catelyn Stark at the Red Wedding.
I'll find another.
Fans felt gutted and betrayed yet again. How can more terrible things keep happening to our honorable and great Starks of Winterfell? Fans are just unlikely to have the same feelings of betrayal and hurt at the loss of the children to a usurper king and his wife especially ones that they barely even knew existed. And although clearly Helena is nothing like Joffrey Baratheon, the fanbase of A Song of Ice and Fire, being undoubtedly on the black side of the axle, will undoubtedly justify the murder of the Prince Jaehaerys as well. It would simply be justified as an eye for an eye, a son for a son.
There is a debt to be paid.
Now, moving on to another crucial point that I've already slightly touched on, is the awareness of the existence of Helena and Aegon's children. Most don't even know that they exist. Helena and her children were barely given any screen time. Feel free to start a timer for 10 seconds, and I'm sure that'll be more than enough time to recite the entirety of Helena's lines during the season's first run. Yeah, it's pretty sad. Other than book readers and fans who get their information from social forums, I'm willing to bet casual show watchers wouldn't be able to tell you Helena, and especially not her children's names. They were literally almost non-existent during the entirety of the first season. But somehow the loss of a child most fans are unaware existed is expected to have the same impact as the loss for characters that fans spent nearly 3 full seasons with. Besides, the fact that Helena was written as a socially awkward weirdo.
Slow.
He's not in his rooms.
Weird. Buddy, you're weird.
Who happens to be the wife to our usurper antagonist, the audience simply wasn't given the chance to build an intimate or meaningful connection with Helena or her children. On top of the fact that, at this point in time, Helena hasn't faced any adversities or misfortunes in her life, or at least any that we the audience know of or have experienced with her, unlike the Stark family whose hurt and pain we experience alongside them, it makes that shield or wanting to protect her even more essentially non-existent. In contrast, her protagonistic lying whore of a half-sister Rhaenyra Targaryen has experienced loss, the death of her beloved son, Lucerys Velaryon. Or should I say strong? Either way, because Rhaenyra has been written to be protected by a cloak and shield of protagonist camouflage, as well as the journey and loss the audience has experienced with her, will allow the casual watcher or reader to sympathize with Rhaenyra more so than Helena. Whether fans realize it or not, going on the lengthy journey with the Starks subconsciously bonded show watchers and book readers alike with the Stark family. We were with them every step of the way. We not only saw, but we experienced the harm that was brought upon that family, until it made you yearn for that justice, for that revenge they so rightfully deserved. So when that inkling of an opportunity was taken right before our eyes at the Red Wedding, it was a loss that not only we didn't expect, but it was a hurt and pain we didn't know we could feel. And it's a pain we are unlikely to ever feel again. And especially not for a character such as the young Prince Jaehaerys Targaryen, who you've barely spent any time with, or even knew existed. And lastly, why Blood and Cheese would more than likely be underwhelming is media television censorship of child death. While many stories feature children that survive miraculously through any incident, others seem to go out of their way to subvert the sorting algorithm of morality when it comes to children. This is a very common practice, especially in Hollywood and many Western films, due to the heavy taboo surrounding deaths to children. We never get to see the murderer kill the child. There may be a scream, but no shadow or gore, if any gets shown to the viewer at all. This is usually due that such on-screen deaths would result in the censorship from media watchdogs and outrage from moral guardians complaining about such deaths on screen. After all, children are innocent, and thus their deaths are often something people can hardly accept, saying things such as, they're too young to die, or they still have a lot they could do and achieve. It could and would likely result in heavy scrutinization of the perpetrator as irredeemable. Even if the death was an accident, human involvement in child death is widely frowned upon in Western media. Thus why we see the terminal illness or cancer trope so often with child death. Because of course, their disease or other things simply out of their control is the only thing that's allowed to kill them. In this particular story, and most of George R. R. Martin's work, children can die just as easily as adults, or perhaps even easier given their relative lack of experience and inability to defend themselves. While there are some notable aversions, such aversions are rare to encounter in most works that contain children. So I don't necessarily think we should get our hopes up for anything different during the tragedy of Blood and Cheese during Season 2 of House of the Dragon. Well guys, those are my reasonings on why the tragedy of Blood and Cheese is not the Red Wedding. The Red Wedding was a historical, once in a lifetime television and fantasy masterpiece, and unfortunately, we should never see its like again. My lords and ladies, this Green Council meeting is officially adjourned. Before the night is dark and full of terror, we must all look out for one another. I will see you on the next video. Bye.